What's happening? It's your bro King Blitz checking in one time for the one time. Today, I got my OG, my mom, here with me. You got anything you want to say real quick?
What's up, everybody? Mom Blitz in the house.
Mama Blitz in the house. So yeah, I told her today that I wanted to put her on a red pill. We grew up with this, of course. The school taught us what slavery is and things of that nature, but I came across this information and I definitely wanted to share it with my mom. Y'all know Sowell has been very prominent on the channel. You familiar with Sowell at all?
No.
Okay, well he's a pretty dope guy. He's just gonna relay some information to you, and I want you to just be as honest and pure about your reactions, whether you agree, disagree, or whatever. I just wanted to make sure I exposed you to what I've been exposed to. So let's do what we do.
These people are creating a terrible problem in our cities. They can't or won't hold a job, they flout the law constantly and neglect their children, they drink too much, and their moral standards would shame an alley cat. For some reason or other, they absolutely refuse to accommodate themselves to any kind of decent, civilized life.
Before we continue, who do you think he's describing?
I gotta hear it.
You want to hear it again? All right. I really, because it's surprising.
These people are creating a terrible problem in our cities. They can't or won't hold a job, they flout the law constantly and neglect their children, they drink too much, and their moral standards would shame an alley cat. For some reason or other, they absolutely refuse to accommodate themselves to any kind of decent, civilized life.
You can be honest. What group of people do you think he was talking about?
Lazy.
Yeah, but like what color group? Which does this describe? White people, black people?
I think they describe in our color.
You think this is describing black people?
Yes.
You'll be surprised.
This was said in 1956 in Indianapolis, not about blacks or other minorities, but about poor whites from the South.
Wow.
Crazy, right?
Yeah.
Crazy, right? Because
Wow.
as he was saying it, I'm sitting there like, oh, wow. Yeah, and yes, he's definitely talking about black people.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, it's crazy.
Nor was Indianapolis unique in this respect. A 1951 survey in Detroit found that white Southerners living there were considered undesirable by 21% of those surveyed, compared to 13% who ranked blacks the same way. In the late 1940s, a Chicago employer said frankly, "I told the guard at the plant gate to tell the hillbillies that there were no openings." When poor whites from the South moved into northern cities to work in war plants during the Second World War, occasionally a white Southerner would find that a flat or a furnished room had just been rented when the landlord heard his Southern accent. More is involved here than a mere parallel between blacks and Southern whites. What is involved is a common subculture that goes back for centuries.
So pretty much he was already judging him based off, his accent in terms of whether he wanted to, give him a chance or not.
Right.
Right.
What is involved is a common subculture that goes back for centuries, which has encompassed everything from ways of talking to attitudes toward education, violence, and sex, and which originated not in the South, but in those parts of the British Isles from which white Southerners came. That culture long ago died out where it originated in Britain, while surviving in the American South. Then it largely died out among both white and black Southerners, while still surviving today in the poorest and worst of the urban black ghettos.
Mm-hmm. But you're seeing where the root of, you heard when he opened it up how he was describing the poor white people.
Exactly.
And he described how it integrated into the South. He told you where it came from, but he told you now where you see it still, the mindset is still sticking to, which is us. You know what I'm saying?
While still surviving today in the poorest and worst of the urban black ghettos. It is not uncommon for a culture to survive longer where it is transplanted and to retain characteristics lost in its place of origin. The French spoken in Quebec and the Spanish spoken in Mexico contain words and phrases that have long since become archaic in France and Spain. Regional German dialects persisted among Germans living in the United States after those dialects had begun to die out in Germany itself. A scholar specializing in the history of the South has likewise noted among white Southerners archaic word forms, while another scholar has pointed out the continued use in that region of terms that were familiar at the time of the first Queen Elizabeth.
I know it's all a lot hitting you at once, but I promise you, the more and more you hear it, the more and more it's gonna make sense.
Okay.
Because like he's giving you a lot of history at once, and it's kind of hard to. Me, I know me. Like if I read a paragraph and you ask me what I read, I look at you and be like,
Right.
I don't know. So I know the first time you hearing all this is kind of like boom, boom, boom. That's why I'm trying to, at any instance I can, I try to just let you know what's going on.
Use in that region of terms that were familiar at the time of the first Queen Elizabeth. The card game whist is today played almost exclusively by blacks, especially low-income blacks, though in the 18th century it was played by the British upper classes and has since then evolved into bridge. The history of the evolution of this game is indicative of a much broader pattern of cultural evolution in much more weighty things. Southern whites not only spoke the English language in very different ways from whites in other regions. Their churches, their roads, their homes, their music, their education, their food, and their sex lives were all sharply different from those of other whites.
In other words, they was eating humbly. You remember when we used to eat humbly? We always had food, don't get it twisted. But we had to deal with what we had, what was on the table, what we was able to afford.
Exactly.
So they preferences for like higher standard foods or music that was super sophisticated. It didn't matter. They had their own culture. Mm-hmm. And if you think about like blacks, we got Ebonics, we got like hip hop music, we got our own. We eat food differently, you know what I'm saying? So, yeah, there's that. He's just pointing that out.
Their food and their sex lives were all sharply different from those of other whites. The history of this redneck or cracker culture is more than a curiosity. It has contemporary significance because of its influence on the economic and social evolution of vast numbers of people, millions of blacks and whites, and its continuing influence on the lives and deaths of a residual population in America's black ghettos, which has still not completely escaped from that culture. From early in American history, foreign visitors and domestic travelers alike were struck by cultural contrasts between the white population of the South and that of the rest of the country in general.
Real quick, when you grew up, I know you say you tell me all the time that we the same in the sense that we the black sheep of the family. Do you think that it's because you wanted to better yourself, that maybe your environment, people would look down on you because you too good for us now. You think you too good because you want to do this better or anything of that nature. Have you ever tried to better yourself and the people around you just didn't want that to happen? So they would call you like, a college girl. Not saying that you went to college, but I mean just like a college girl or you think you smart or nerd, stuff like that.
It's just that the things that I see that was growing up, in society, I just wanted to be different.
Yeah.
I didn't want, you all to grow up in certain areas, certain different things that I saw people were doing. And, I didn't want you all to get caught up in that lifestyle. So I chose to be different. I chose to do things differently now. You have people that will talk. They would say this and, but I had to choose what I had to choose for you all, what was best for you all. So this is what I decided. So a lot of times,
No, I think that's dope.
Right, because a lot of times, like you said, I was the mother of 7 children. Mm-hmm. And basically I raised you all by myself. Well, really with the help of God.
Of course.
But, it took a lot to do that. So I needed to be there for you all. So I didn't care what people said about this. Well, you strict, you this, you that. Yeah. But now that you all got older, you all can appreciate what I've done for you all. You all were angry then. Y'all got tired of eating chicken every day.
Man, I eat chicken every day now.
But I was able to do the chicken. I boiled the chicken, baked the chicken, So we had different varieties of chicken, but y'all was able to eat. I made sure we had them big Ma and Paul kettle pots that I used to cook, because I had a lot of y'all. So I had to emphasize. I had to do things that would fill you all up. It's not what you all wanted, but it's what you all needed.
But you took, definitely. You took personal responsibility in saying, I see a pattern in this lifestyle that I'm on right now. If I don't make these differences, not only for myself, but also for my children, then it can also send them down the path, which is ultimately personal responsibility. And the reason why I brought all of this up is because since I've been on this journey for knowledge, of course, because I'm willing to listen and open my ears up because I'm seeking a better mindset towards things, I get frowned upon, and it's not like to know how to grid, nothing like that. That's like really, bringing me down on a regular basis physically or mentally. But I do catch a lot of flack now just from people I grew up with. Just like, oh man, you listen to that, oh, you a coon now. I'm like, what? The person who's talking, he's black. And I'm black every day. Like, it don't, anyhow, that's the only reason why I brought that up.
Okay.
Not completely escaped from that culture. From early in American history, foreign visitors and domestic travelers alike were struck by cultural contrasts between the white population of the South and that of the rest of the country in general, and of New England in particular. In the early 19th century, Alexis de Tocqueville contrasted white Southerners with white Northerners in his classic Democracy in America, and Frederick Law Olmsted did the same later in his books about his travels through the antebellum South, notably Cotton Kingdom. The cultural values and social patterns prevalent among Southern whites included an aversion to work, proneness to violence, neglect of education, sexual promiscuity, improvidence, drunkenness, lack of entrepreneurship, reckless searches for excitement, lively music and dance, and a style of religious oratory marked by strident rhetoric, unbridled emotions, and flamboyant imagery. This oratorical style carried over into the political oratory of the region in both the Jim Crow era and the Civil Rights era.
You came right after the Jim Crow era, didn't you?
Yeah.
When was it? Hold on, let me Google it. When was the Jim Crow era? '20th century. It was in 1950. Oh, all the way. Yup, you was born right when the Civil Rights Act helped to end legally mandated. You were born a year before. Yeah, you was born in the heart of it.
Political oratory of the region in both the Jim Crow era and the Civil Rights era, and has continued on into our own times among black politicians, preachers, and activists. Touchy pride, vanity, and boastful self-dramatization were also part of this redneck culture among people from regions of Britain where the civilization was the least developed. They boast and lack self-restraint, Olmsted said, after observing their descendants in the American antebellum South. While Professor Grady McWhiney's Cracker Culture is perhaps the most thorough historical study of the values and behavioral patterns of white Southerners, many other scholarly studies have turned up very similar patterns, even when they differed in some ways as to the causes. Professor David Hackett Fisher's Albion Seed, for example, challenges the Celtic connection thesis put forth by Professor McWhiney, but shows many of the same cultural patterns among the same people, both in Britain and in the American South. Popular writings of the 19th and 20th centuries have likewise described similar behavior, including the Indianapolis residents' comments on white Southern migrants to that city, which sound so much like what many have said about ghetto blacks.
Yep.
None of this is meant to claim that these patterns have remained rigidly unchanged over the centuries, or that there are literally no differences between whites and blacks in any aspects of this subculture.
He's not saying that.
However, what is remarkable is how pervasive and how close the similarities have been.
Yup. So, again, he was just reiterating, he's not denouncing that there hasn't been an imbalance between whites and black. He's not saying that, slavery didn't exist or nothing like that. But he just wanted to point out the facts like, whoa, we are pretty similar in our upbringing more than we've been taught. And I can't wait till the next time you come over here so I can give you the video on facts mentioned about slavery that you never knew. You'll be surprised to find out how when I found out slave blacks and sold blacks, I'm not saying that it didn't denounce the history of America at all. But it was very surprising because you never learn nothing like that. It's always the white people who, slaved us and stuff like that. So just to keep an open mind.
Exactly.
Not to say, hey, you totally agree or totally disagree. Even if it is facts, unfortunately, it's just how it goes. But yeah, I just wanted to make sure I laid it out for you. Anything you wanted to say before we wrap it up?
No, I just want to say something what we was talking about earlier. The thing was at the particular time as raising you all, it wasn't that I judge people. I didn't judge people. People raise and do their children the way they want it. So it's not that being judge of whatever they did, however they did it with their children. I just want people to know that, you know, you do you.
Yeah.
And not worry about what other people say about you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? How
yeah, because what people think about you is least
exactly.
It's none of your business.
So everybody may not raise their children the same. Well, they don't, certain ones. But the thing is, and I don't want people to feel upset if their children go a different way.
Of course.
Because you can raise your children the best that you know how. But if they choose to go the opposite way, it's not your fault.
Yeah.
So no matter.
I mean, there's so many different things that factor into that than it just being your fault. If you honestly gave it your best and you put your best foot forward, always trying to figure out the best way to deal with, you know, your circumstances. Of course, looking at yourself, because you mentioned something important, which was looking at yourself and changing things about yourself in order to change the overall scenario. So as long as you're doing that and had the best intentions, I mean, and love is the biggest part of it. So as long as you loved on us, I don't think that there's, I ain't gonna say that. It is room for somebody to go the other way, but I mean, you gave them every tool, you gave us every tool that we could possibly have taken on with the world. So, yeah, man. Thank y'all for coming to kick it. If it's your first time, I know it won't be your last. If you made it to the end of this video, thank y'all. But if you can smash that like button on your way out, it'd truly be appreciated. As always, y'all be safe. Go check on somebody today. You could be saving their life. Kingdom.